listeners. It is a beautiful Friday evening. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of our program series, Agricultural Productivity and Inclusive Economic Growth. Yes, it is Armourgate Radio Communications, and of course, I remain your host, Titilola Ogunsona. I'm excited today. I'm thrilled. I'm happy because this episode promises to be another engaging, informative, and insightful one, because we have an seasoned guest, someone who is well versed on the subject matter that we'll be discussing today. We will be looking at agriculture, finance, and credit, a catalyst for optimum productivity. Agriculture is seen as the backbone of many economies, countries, and nations, providing food, employment, and income for millions of people around the globe. Despite the significant role or potentials agriculture plays or holds, farmers and agro-allied businesses still experience significant challenges in accessing required finance for investment, which will also help to mitigate or manage risk and increase their level of productivity. So today we'll be discussing the various ways which agriculture, finance, and credit can be used to drive productivity and growth. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a distinguished guest in person of Mrs. Yetunde Adeyanju. She's a seasoned economist with focus and expertise in agricultural financing. Thank you so much, Mrs. Adeyanju, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, don't mind that voice. The voice is very sweet, very soft, but she's really loaded. So stay tuned as we go on today's episode. Okay, going to my first question, Mrs. Adeyanju. Research consistently shows a strong correlation between access to capital and agricultural output. At the most basic level, farmers require funds for critical inputs like improved seeds, fertilizers, and seasonal labor, which are said to be the primary drivers of yield. So from your perspective, how does the availability or the lack of simple short-term seasonal credit fundamentally determine a smallholder farmer's potential for achieving optimal productivity in a single planting season?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mrs. Ogunsona. Before we dive into the question, let's quickly talk about agriculture finance.
Okay.
Agriculture finance to the financial services and products that support agricultural activities,
Okay.
like farming, livestock production, and agribusiness. It's also providing access to capital, managing risk, and facilitating transactions to help farmers and agribusinesses thrive.
Okay.
Now let's think of it like farmers need money to buy seeds, equipment, and labor,
Okay.
just like any other business. So the availability or lack or the availability of simple short-term seasonal credit can be a game changer for smallholder farmers. It shapes a smallholder farmer's productivity in a single planting season in several interlinked ways. One of it is access to key inputs at the right time. We know smallholder farmers often face liquidity constraints, such that they don't have cash in hand just before planting season.
Okay.
And during the planting season, we usually experience expenses. Some of these farm products being expensive,
Okay.
like seeds, fertilizers, and even hired labor. This is because they are in the period whereby they are supposed to start planting to prepare for harvesting later. So with credit, smallholder farmers are able to purchase improved seeds on time, apply adequate fertilizer, and employ timely labor operations, which significantly boosts the farm yields. Also, where there is no credit, smallholder farmers are forced to rely on some of their saved seeds that were used or that were kept in the past, minimal fertilizers, and delayed planting, which leads to suboptimal productivity at the end of the planting season. Another is ability to manage risk and invest on productivity. As we all know that agriculture is inherently risky
Yes.
due to weather, which sometimes are forecasted rightly and which sometimes are not as planned. Pest and price volatility. Availability of credit to farmers allows them to diversify crops or invest in irrigation, which cautions against climate risk. Such, for example, this year, where during the planting season, where many people think, okay, there'll be rainfall in this particular season. The weather forecasted this season is different from the past. The period where people needed rainfall was not available. So irrigation system plays a large role, an important role in that aspect. It allows them to adopt productivity, enhancing innovation, e.g. mechanized tools and pest management. Without credit, farmers stay trapped in a low input, low output cycle. That means the kind of inputs they use, seedlings, fertilizers, will determine the output they will get. So when you use maybe less inputs, you are likely not to get what is expected. So they are left with the option with producing only for themselves rather than market-oriented surplus. Another is seasonal timing and cash flow. Seasonal credit aligns with the crop cycle. Funds or credits are provided at planting and repaid after harvest. That means when it's time for these smallholder farmers to plant, they go for these funds. Then after they've planted and they've harvested, they are able to refund these funds back to the lenders. This timing smooths income fluctuations and ensures operational efficiency. Whereas where credit is not available or where credit is delayed, it can lead to major yield losses. Market leverage and bargaining power is also a way to help smallholder farmers. Credit empowers farmers to store crops and sell later when market prices are better, rather than farmers engaging in distress sales right after harvest to repay informal lenders who gave funds even at exorbitant interest rates. So the last one I'm going to talk about here is the multiplier effect on rural development. When smallholder farmers access credit, productivity gains multiple ripple outwards, and they include higher yields that increases household income, increased demand for local labor and services, which boosts the rural economy, that is, creating employment. Then more consistent output can attract agro-processing or aggregation enterprises. So in summary, the availability of seasonal credits can be the difference between a successful harvest and a disappointing one. It's not just about the money, it's about the opportunities that credit can unlock for smallholder farmers. So by providing them with financial resources needed, they can achieve optimum productivity, improve their livelihood, and contribute to food security in their communities.
Thank you so much, listeners. I've told you that's a roller coaster. I'm sitting tight, enjoying a lot. I said it's going to be insightful, it's going to be engaging, it's going to be very informative. Okay, yes, I'm going to take you up on what you have said, Mrs. Adeyanju. To summarize, you said that definitely as availability of credit, when farmers have access, the smallholder farmers have access to credit, you said it's going to be a game changer, that you'll be having access to the key inputs at the right time. So for what you said, timeliness is very important. Having access to that finance at a particular point in time. So right before the harvest time. Okay, and also you also said definitely that because if you have access to credit, you'll be able to manage your risk better. That risk that you can actually mitigate. And you talked about diversification of crops, okay, and also mentioned what I like again, investment. You can invest in irrigation. Okay, because definitely sometimes you cannot really predict the weather. It might not be weather forecast, might not be accurate. You are going to need water. You are going to need the rainfall. And you can actually do that. We have countries actually doing mechanized farming. And even some have even started deploying AI. in agriculture. So if they're actually going beyond, it means they're going to not just produce what you can you're not going to produce for just consumption in your country.
Yes.
Rather, you also produce for export.
Yeah.
Okay, and I like what you said, that the lack of finance to all the smallholders is going to be low input, low output cycle. So sometimes it's not just about the inability of farmers to produce quality output. It also leads to what kind of the quality of their input. But what you have said, and you also mentioned something very germane, that the issue of storage. Once they have access to finance, they can store that product, they can keep them the produce, and they can avoid distress sale. Okay, now and you also spoke about the multiplier effect on these rural areas, because it leads to food security for the nation. Now I want to take you up on this. Do you think that avoiding distress sale, that access to adequate finance that is structured, according to seasonal repayments, would help to avoid distress sale?
Yes, there won't be any form of smallholder farmers involving in distress sales, because it's not just about the finance. The structure of the repayment of the funds actually collected initially has to be considered, because it's a crucial one. The repayment period must synchronize with the planting and harvest season.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Adeyanju, for that response. Now, I want to say this again, that it said that agricultural credit isn't a single product. Definitely they're going to vary from short-term input loans, medium-term assets, financing for machinery or irrigation, to long-term credit for land acquisition and others. And we realize that each of these products serve different purpose in the production cycle. From the cycle of the stage of planting, to even the clearing, the pre-planting stage, from the clearing to the planting stage to the harvest period, the harvesting stage. Okay, so basically there are different kinds of financial products that you could have that will serve various purposes. Okay, so in your experience, which type of financial product would you say have demonstrated the most significant and direct catalytic effect on productivity? Like for instance, we could have import of financing, irrigation, infrastructure. So if you have something like that, which one of them will you say is greater? Will you say that irrigation infrastructure is greater than financing of fertilizers? So in your own opinion, from your experience, what kind of financial products would you say have demonstrated the most significant and direct catalytic effect on productivity?
Thank you so much. Research evidence have shown that the most catalytic financial products are those that addresses farmers' immediate productivity bottlenecks, while laying a foundation for long-term growth. Considering the different financial products, such as short-term input loans, which are majorly required for seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides. These types of credit has the most immediate and direct effect on productivity within a single planting season. It ensures farmers can buy improved seeds, apply the right fertilizer, and even hire labor at the right time. Yields can rise from maybe like 30 to 100% depending on the crop and soil conditions. Another one is medium-term asset financing. This, for example, for the purchase of machineries like irrigation system, mechanization, storage, and so on and so forth. This has a transformational impact. It can also have a substantial impact on productivity by increasing efficiency, reducing labor costs, and enables farmers to cultivate and manage larger areas. It reduces dependence on rainfall, allows multiple cropping cycles, and even improves efficiency. The third one, without wasting time, is long-term credit, which is majorly for land acquisition, and farm expansion. This type of credit can be essentially used for farm expansion and investment. It has an indirect and long-term impact or effect on productivity. For example, land acquisition can lead to increased production capacity, but may take time to realize the benefit because it is actually a long-term benefit. Now, comparing the impact of financing irrigation infrastructure and financing fertilizer. Mind you, let's not forget that financing irrigation infrastructure is a medium-term credit, while financing fertilizer is a short-term credit. So, financing irrigation infrastructure can have a more significant and lasting impact on productivity. Irrigation allows farmers to control water supply, reduce crop stress, and increase crop yields. It allows them to plant multiple crops per year, hereby expanding their production capacity. The thing with financing irrigation infrastructure is that it allows you to have multiple planting in a year. You don't necessarily have to follow the calendar of you plant this time, you harvest this time. Once there's a direct and standing irrigation system, it allows you to plant and even harvest more. So financing fertilizer, on the other hand, is important for crop nutrition and yield, and it might have a more immediate but potential short-term impact on productivity. Fertilizer application can lead to significant yield, which increases significant yield increase, but the benefit may be more dependent on other factors like soil quality, weather, and even pest management. So therefore, personally, the most effective approach should involve the combination of financial products tailored to the specific needs of the farmer and their farm. While financing irrigation infrastructure tends to ensure sustainability and resilience, financing fertilizer increases output and yields. So the greatest results occur when both forms of finance are combined together. So financing fertilizer, which is a short-term credit, increases yields immediately, while financing irrigation infrastructure, which is a long-term credit investment, supports investment and maintains consistent productivity over time.
Okay, and I've told you that Mrs. Adeyanju has a lot. She has experience and expertise in this field. Okay, and within a short time, in response to my questions, has given us a lot. I've said that, talking about the impact of financing some irrigation infrastructure is equal than that of financing fertilizer, because you're still talking about the input. Like we said, is when it's low input, it's going to leave low input will give you low output cycle, which we don't want, because it's talking about a catalyst, talking about investment for agricultural finance and credit, a catalyst for optimum productivity. Now what we have said is that, for instance, if what we are looking at is irrigation infrastructure, we are saying it's more medium term and it's more sustainable. It's going to give us higher yield in the medium term. But for immediate gains, if we finance fertilizers, and what you also said is also interesting, he said that because fertilizer will also be dependent on other factors. It's not about the soil and other factors that determine the optimum value that you get from applying fertilizers. Now, and what you have said again is that for you, it's not just one approach. You're saying that a combination of both would give greater optimum value, and you also said that it also should be tailored to the need of the farmer.
Yes.
So the farmer and the farm, because the quality of farm, the design of product will also determine the level of productivity. So in your own opinion, you're saying that one is not actually greater than the other. They only have a time frame, a time horizon, so that what applies, what you need in the short term is this, what you need in the long term is what you call about transformational impact. Okay, so you need both the immediate and transformational impact to make optimum productivity, in the country. Thank you so much for that. Yes, we'll take a short break, a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Armourgate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Armourgate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thearmourgate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.thearmourgate.org. Armourgate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.
Thank you for staying tuned. We are back from the brief commercial break. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Today we are considering agriculture, finance and credit, a catalyst for optimum productivity. And we have a seasoned economics which focuses on expertise in agricultural financing, in person of our distinguished guest, Mrs. Yetunde Adeyanju. I promised you, listeners, that is going to be an insightful, expository, engaging session. I've enjoyed myself. I've learned a lot from her, and I hope you have done as well. And for those just joining, yes, you're going to learn more from her. So we'll go to the third question for today. Despite the clear need, a significant credit gap persists globally, especially for smallholders. Traditional lenders often perceive this sector, that's the agricultural sector, as a high-risk sector due to various factors which include the lack of formal collateral, fragmented land holdings, and high vulnerability to climate shocks. Okay, so Mrs. Adeyanju, I want to ask you this question: what would you say is the single largest barrier that prevent finance from acting as an effective catalyst for the majority of farmers? Various people, various scholars, researchers have mentioned a lot of barriers, that prevent finance from acting as an effective catalyst for majority of farmers. So I want to ask you to identify, what would you identify as the single greatest barrier? Okay, and also this barrier, there are two questions in one. How does this identified barrier or challenge that you're going to be talking to us about in the next couple of minutes distort the risk reward calculation for lenders?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mrs. Ogunsona. Well, from the question, the greatest barrier, I wouldn't say there's a single barrier, because from what I denoted, I can say the barrier there is attributed to two, not one.
Okay.
So the barrier preventing finance from acting as an effective catalyst for most smallholder farmers can be attributed to two major factors.
Okay.
One of it is lack of formal land ownership and collateralizable assets. The second one is lack of reliable credit information and farmer data infrastructure. So let's take the first one, which is lack of formal land ownership and collateralizable assets. This barrier distorts the risk-reward calculation for lenders in several ways. One of it is inability to collateralize loans.
Okay.
Many smallholder farmers cannot provide collateral required by traditional lenders.
Okay.
And this makes it difficult for the smallholder farmers to access credit. The second one there is limited credit history.
Okay.
Smallholder farmers often lack a formal credit history, and this makes it challenging for lenders to assess their credit worthiness.
Okay.
The third one here is high transaction costs. Lending to smallholders involves high transaction costs due to small loan sizes. Due to small loan sizes, higher risk assessment costs. Assessing creditworthiness of smallholders can be more complex and expensive. Also, geographical dispersion. Serving rural areas increases operational costs. Increases operational costs. Also, having higher perceived risk. Lenders view smallholders as high-risk borrowers due to the lack of collateral, leading to higher interest rates or stricter loan terms. So the second one I earlier mentioned was lack of reliable credit risk information and farmer data infrastructure. Traditional lenders struggle to assess the true creditworthiness of smallholders because most of them operate outside the formal financial system. Without verifiable records of income, land titles, or production history. So this makes it difficult for lenders to assess risk accurately. This information gap makes farming appear high risk. So banks demand collateral or charge high interest rates, thus excluding many farmers. The risk-reward balance is distorted because lenders see too much risk for too little return. Now, strengthening digital farmer database credit histories and agricultural data infrastructure would reduce perceived risk and encourage more inclusive agricultural lending, thereby promoting inclusive and sustainable agricultural development.
I couldn't just say how true, because I actually hit the nail on the head. And I like the fact that you said, well, for you can't say one, you have two, and even the two comprises of a lot of factors into one, let alone two. And the lack of formal land ownership and collateralizable asset is one thing that is major. But you also said that I also agree with you. The second one is the issue of data infrastructure, because even when banks, financial institutions, lending institutions want to make, that lending decision, they need to know the level of credit worthiness. They need to know the level of exposure, have more data on the small holders, which they might not be, might not have readily accessible. Now, I think on another episode, or maybe when you come in next week, we also look at that countries getting instead of data infrastructure. I'm sure that some developed nations, or even some nations across, even on the African continent, will be getting instead of data infrastructure, because of course it will work for some nations. Then we have to see how we can also work for developing nations. From what you have said, once they have more data on them, once they have more of them within the formal financial sector, and that's where we even talk about financial inclusion, or even financial literacy. I remember the previous, not the last quarter, 2 quarters ago, I looked at financial inclusion and economic growth in Nigeria, where we looked at economic growth, where we even looked at what was happening across the globe in terms of financial inclusion. And I think that this is also a place where financial inclusion will also play a major role, and even financial literacy. Thank you so much, Mrs. Adeyanju. It has been a very engaging, informative, expository session for me, and I'm sure our listener would also agree with me that it has been it's been so interesting, so engaging, and also informative as well. I wish we go on and on, but we will This is all we can take on today's episode. We want to draw the curtain here, but I know that we would always want to have you back next week, next episode. I'm sure that you want to join us. Okay, so we can continue with the concluding part of this episode. We conclude on this journey that we have started. We're going to conclude it next week by God's grace. So we hope you join us next week, Mrs. Adeyanju. Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any closing thought for us before we draw the curtain?
Thank you so much, Dr. and Mrs. Ogunsona. On the closing notes, agricultural finance and credit remain powerful catalysts for achieving optimum productivity, especially among smallholder farmers. When designed to be timely, accessible, and inclusive, finance transforms farming from a subsistence activity into a productive enterprise.
That is a powerful closing thought from our distinguished guest, Mrs. Adeyanju, and this goes in line with Samuel Johnson's quote, which says that agriculture not only gives riches to a nation, but rather the only riches she can call our own. That's all we have on today's episode. We hope that you join us next Friday, same time, 5 p.m. WAT on Armourgate Radio Communications. Remember to join my colleagues Monday to Thursday, same time, 5 p.m. WAT. And if you have your consulting needs, your communication needs, your training needs, we have you covered at Armourgate. If you want to learn more about us, what we do, our team, our services, our client base, what you've done in the past, our history, please check us up on our website www.thearmourgate.org, and of course our social media platforms are there, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, you have it, the Instagram is Armourgate. Yes, thank you so much. It was a delight having our guest speaker today. I enjoyed her. Until I find my way to your devices next week, stay blessed, and remember to send your questions, your feedback to us. The mail has not changed. It's contact@thearmourgate.org. Have a blissful weekend. I remain Titilola Ogunsona saying bye from here.